The faint click of the door was what tore me out of sleep. It wasn't loud, barely more than a whisper, but there was something about the sound that felt wrong, wrong enough to pull me upright in bed. My wife never left our room at night, especially not here, not while we were on vacation, where everything was supposed to be easy and full of sun, laughter, and long mornings spent in bed together. I stayed still for a moment, heart pounding in the dark, listening to the careful rhythm of her footsteps fade into the corridor. There was something in the way she moved, deliberate, quiet, as if she was afraid to wake me, that tightened around my chest. I tried to talk myself down. Maybe she couldn't sleep. Maybe she just wanted to look at the ocean under the moonlight, clear her mind. Maybe she just wanted to breathe. But if that was true, why sneak? Why not shake my shoulder and whisper, "Come with me"? She'd done that before, dozens of times, when she couldn't sleep. The absence of that familiar gesture made the silence in the room suffocating. I swung my legs over the bed, the cool tile shocking me awake as my bare feet touched the floor. Something in me refused to let this go, refused to pretend I hadn't heard. The hallway outside was dimly lit, resort lanterns casting pools of golden light along the wooden floors. I padded forward slowly, my pulse sounding louder than my steps, my breath shallow and controlled. I caught sight of her just as she turned the corner. Her hair hung loose, swaying behind her. The dress she wore clung to her like it had been chosen for this very moment. She didn't look like a woman out for fresh air. She looked like someone with a destination, someone who had been waiting for this. I followed her from a distance, each step weighed down by a conflict inside me. Half of me wanted to stop, to go back to the room, to close my eyes and pretend I had never seen her leave. But another, colder part of me, sharper and impossible to ignore, needed to know. She moved across the resort grounds with precision, taking narrow paths between hedges, bypassing the main walkways, heading down toward the beach. And then I saw him, a figure waiting at the edge of the shore, standing in the dark like he belonged there. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared. She went straight to him. There was no hesitation, no pause, no sign of guilt. She fit into his arms like they had been made for her, like this was something they'd done before. I saw his hand slide through her hair, saw her fingers trace the edge of his jaw with a tenderness I hadn't felt from her in months. It wasn't clumsy or new. It was a touch that spoke of intimacy, of familiarity. My first instinct was to run at them, to rip her away, to demand answers right there on the beach. But my body refused to move. I stood frozen, rooted in the sand, watching the world I thought I knew collapse in front of me. Every memory of the last few weeks slammed into me all at once. Her sudden excuses before this trip, the way she left her phone face down on the table, the nights she turned away from me and said she was too tired. I had brushed them off, wrapped them in trust, convinced myself that love was stronger than suspicion. But now there was no denying it. I forced myself to take slow, deliberate steps closer, crouching behind a dune until I was close enough to hear them over the crashing waves. Her laughter reached me first, soft, private, the kind of laughter I hadn't heard from her in so long. Then came his voice, low and teasing. "You shouldn't have come. What if he notices?" Her reply hit me harder than a fist. "He won't. He never notices anymore." I couldn't breathe. I had noticed. I had noticed everything. I had just been too afraid to admit it. My hand pressed over my mouth to keep from making a sound as I watched them kiss, slow, lingering, full of something that had once belonged to me. Something inside me cracked. This wasn't just betrayal. It was the slow dismantling of the life I thought I had, the rewriting of every memory we'd made together. I stumbled back, my feet unsteady on the sand. I didn't confront them. I didn't scream, didn't drag her back to our room. I turned and walked away, the night air heavy on my shoulders. Each step felt like carrying a coffin. The coffin of my marriage, the coffin of the man I was before this moment. Hours later, she returned. I was lying in bed, my body still, my breathing even, pretending to be asleep. She slipped in beside me, her skin still smelling faintly of salt water, of him. She turned away from me, curling her back to mine just like she had so many nights before, and whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Good night." The words were ordinary, but they hollowed me out. In the morning, the sun filled the room like nothing had happened. She smiled across the breakfast table. laughed about the plans for the day, kissed my cheek as if she hadn't just buried a knife into my chest hours earlier. I played along. I smiled. I nodded. I let her hold my hand. But inside, every touch burned, every word felt false. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her disguise, her excuse, the thing that let her keep living two lives. I told myself I'd wait, that I'd gather proof, gather courage, find the right moment to end this. But deep down I knew the truth. I was waiting because I couldn't let go. Not yet. Love doesn't vanish just because it's been betrayed. That was the cruelest part. That night, when she slipped out again, I stayed in bed. I didn't follow. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, letting the truth seep into me like poison. Some betrayals are loud, breaking you all at once. Others are quiet, creeping in until you realize the life you thought you were living had already died long before you noticed. Mine was both. The resort staff must have thought we were perfect. The smiling couple holding hands by day, lounging by the pool, posing for pictures. And in a way we were perfect. Perfect at pretending. By the time we packed to leave, my decision was made. I wouldn't confront her here, not where the air smelled of sunscreen and ocean, not in a place built for happiness. I would wait until we were home, until the masks had to come off. She thought I was blind. She thought I didn't see. But I saw everything. On our last night, as she slept beside me, I stared into the darkness and whispered words meant only for the shadows. I noticed everything. And with that, I closed my eyes, no longer the man I had been before, carrying both the weight of betrayal and the cold, clear calm of someone who finally understood the truth.